U.S. Secretary of the Interior is saying that we are dangerously close to power blackouts. Parts of our country are at risk of that same kind of what I call the Biden brownouts, blackouts to happen. This is from the Energy Secretary of the United States. We need to talk about what's going on here, what the warning is, what he's talking about, and how it could endanger you and your family. Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Poplar Report. I'm Steve Poplar. I'm an accountant by trade, and these are the things the mainstream media just doesn't want to talk about. They want you to believe that everything is great out there, everything's peachy keen, but we're hearing more and more from the Trump administration, honest individuals from Republican backgrounds, Democratic backgrounds, just people who actually care about truth. I know it's crazy, actually warning other people that, hey, we're in danger. And that is not any different when we start talking about the power grid in the United States. You know, I've talked a lot about that on this channel here. And so you may hear some things from Secretary Borgham that you go, gee, I've heard that before. Yes, you have. Yes, you have. But we're gonna let him lay this out to you guys because this is super, super important. You flip off the power in the United States and you watch the United States decline to a third world country over a matter of days. You see this happen when disasters happen, but even then, we're bringing massive amounts of resources in from the outside. From areas where the power is still on, brings those resources into the areas where the power is off. What happens when it's all power off? Well, things will fall apart dramatically and quickly. So how much danger do we have here? We just saw this massive power blackout in Spain, but it didn't just happen in Spain. It also happened in Portugal, also happened in France. France had a lot of power issues, but because they have a lot of nuclear power plants, they were able to compensate. Also, they were able to stop exporting power to their leech neighbor, Spain. They cut Spain off, and that was kind of like a kick in the teeth. But what fundamentally was the problem here? All right, let's look here. Secretary Borgham, who is the Interior Secretary, which covers aspects of energy, and also, so he's not the Energy Secretary, but he does cover issues of oil exploration, natural gas fracking, a lot of this, land use management that covers things like the pipelines and everything like that. Secretary Borgham used to be governor of North Dakota, and you just kind of know where he stands on things just from that, don't you? He said that the United States of America is at risk of suffering from blackouts like Spain, due to the acceptance and the foisting upon the power grid of intermittent power supplies. Now, I'm not against renewable energy, okay? If you go out into my backyard, you're going to see a whole bunch of solar panels. A whole bunch of solar panels. I don't hate renewable energy. I don't hate solar. I don't hate wind. I hate wind a little bit, and I have reasons for that. But solar has its place. I think solar as a backup for individuals makes sense. If you're at a remote location, you want solar. It's the best, cheapest power source that will produce over a long haul to do. I mean, solar's great. But when you start tying it into a national power grid, suddenly it doesn't make sense. It's just not very efficient. It's very expensive. And it has a big problem. You're going to have very big, costly batteries. And when you start trying to scale up those batteries, it doesn't really scale. You basically have to take the same kind of batteries that I have at my house. You just need to start stacking them up into giant racks and massive power banks. And when one of these things catches on fire, it's just devastating. Anyway, so that's what happened to Spain. We just saw in Spain, this is Secretary Borgham saying this, we just saw in Spain, they were celebrating on April 12th, this past month, not very long ago, less than a month ago. They celebrated on April 12th that they'd shut down their last coal-fired power plant. Kudos to them. Well, I mean, they think it's kudos to them, right? A week after that, they were celebrating the fact that they had their first day of 100% renewables on their system. So for one day, they actually got enough power from their wind and solar and some of the other systems in order to power their grid completely. And this was a celebration for them. This is a podcast called All In with the co-host David Friedberg. Then the next week, there was global news story because people were trapped in subways. All airline flights canceled. Hospitals were panicking with a lack of power because they had rolling blackouts and grid failure. Is there any linkage here? They shut down their final coal-fired power plant, and then just days later, they have a massive blackout that takes down their grid. Now, the Spanish government out there is saying basically that there were reasons and there was glitches and there were issues that happened. But the point remains that those glitches, those issues, wouldn't have taken the power grid down if they had a couple coal-fired power plants and natural gas-fired power plants linked to the grid. If they did, they could have flipped those on, or if they had a coal-fired power plant in the grid, it would have stabilized the grid. But that's the thing. These traditional gas-fired, coal-fired power plants, even nuclear power plants, they stabilize the grid. Solar and wind destabilize the grid. And we saw their grid got destabilized and they lost power. They decided that intermittent renewable energy was a great idea, and they destabilized their own power grid, and then it failed. It's like they're playing Jenga and then get surprised when all the blocks come falling down. Well, if you don't want the blocks to fall down, stop, pulling logs off the bottom, right? He also said this: We became dangerously close to that right now. We've got parts of our country that are at risk for those same kind of what I call the Biden brownouts and blackouts to happen. He was criticizing the over-subsidization of intermittent renewable energy and the stringent regulations on stable base load power sources such as coal and nuclear. You need these to stabilize things. He said basically you can have some renewables, and that's not a bad thing to have, but you can only have a certain percentage of it before you need the rest to be base load. This has been like standard operating procedure for years and years and years. It's just all these smart people are so smart, they go, well, we've put so much solar and wind on the power grid so far, and that hasn't broken anything. So therefore, we can get rid of all the rest of the power grid and just go wind and solar, and it should be fine. And every expert in the world that's not on the payroll of a government will tell you that's insane. That doesn't make any sense. It's absolutely, completely, factually incorrect. Secretary Borgham also covered another topic which I think is really related. He didn't relate it as much as I'm going to. He was also asked what keeps him up at night. And he said that China's leading in the development of AI. This is what keeps him up at night. And let me just throw this stat out for you. Microsoft just admitted about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I saw it come across my feed, that 30% of its code, of its current code for Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Word, the operating system, Windows, of these programs that Microsoft produces, 30% of the code is now written by AI. Artificial intelligence is writing 30% of the code in Microsoft. Now, my question for you here is, if an AI can code, can it also pick apart code? Can it analyze code? Can it hack code? And the answer is absolutely. AI can be trained to hack code or systems. It can also be trained to defend systems. So when we have a cyber war in the future here, which is inevitable, it's going to happen. When we have a cyber war, we're going to have AI attacking and we're going to have AI defending systems. And this is one of those things that is just hard to understand because so much of it's technical, right? And cyber attacks are one of those things that, how do you explain that to the American public or any other nation's public in a way that they get actually upset? China can launch a massive cyber attack against the United States, and even if we're inconvenienced and we're really put out, it's hard for us to understand what actually even happened. When you have Iran and the Houthis going up against Israel and they're launching missiles at each other and stuff, you can understand when they launch missiles at you that understandably you're upset, right? But I think so many of us think of like a cyber attack feels like somebody said something mean about you, right? If someone launches a cyber attack against you, it's not like you can go over to their country and send the B-2 stealth bombers into their airspace and start carpet bombing stuff, right? I mean, I think that most of us would feel like that's kind of a little bit out of proportion. You can't go over there and end people's lives because they attacked your computer system. But yet, when China attacks the United States power grid and shuts off the power, and thousands of people perish because of that, does that change our understanding of things? Can you actually convince people at large? Most people who are still trying to figure out how to share photos with each other on their smartphones. These people have to explain the intricacies of cyber attacks. Oh, their artificial intelligence trained by China is being used to attack our infrastructure, which, again, that American people don't really understand what the infrastructure does or is or whatever. China used its mumbo jumbo to attack our mumbo jumbo, and that's what most people are going to hear. It's very different than someone came over here and punched us in the face, or somebody launched a missile at us, or somebody came and sank one of our ships. They touched our boats. Okay, we get upset about that, and we all kind of understand. Yeah, okay, yeah, we got to do something about that. But then China comes over here and starts messing around with all of our systems, and what do you do to that, right? So how do you do tit for tat? But infrastructure, and that's really where we're at, is that we're destabilizing our power grid in the United States. And it's not just the United States. I mean, Europe is just going all in on this. It's like, if it helps the power grid be stabilized, let's stop using those and take those off the grid and replace them with things that destabilize the power grid. I mean, China, for the most part, is just sitting back and watching the Western world implode. Sure, it's creating fentanyl to give a nice firm shove to the United States and other countries. They're going out there and they're sabotaging things and they're causing problems in certain things. But by and large, China is just watching the Western world implode. I mean, they're They're on the campuses trying to convince people to promote communism and such, to undermine the Western world and to criticize everything that about the foundation of the United States and foundation of other nations, trying to encourage, and China is absolutely out there funding the movement of people into the United States. And during the Biden administration, China was outright paying people to come into the United States. And the Biden administration loved that, just loved that. They were just thinking, this is great. China's helping us. No, China was not helping us. They were moving the worst of the worst into the United States in order to continue to undermine and to destabilize the United States. This is classic stuff. So there it is, from the Interior Secretary of the United States warning us about what is going down, what has been going down for the past 4 years, and what is the most concerning things up ahead. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments down below. Let us know what you guys think about the power grid. Secretary of the Interior telling us that the power grid inside the United States is not stable and it has some serious problems, and that he's really concerned about artificial intelligence and China's lead in it. War is changing. Israel was the first country that I know of that really used artificial intelligence in a attack and a battlefield scenario. They used AI and are using AI in their fight in Gaza to identify targets. Same thing with identifying targets in Lebanon of Hezbollah. They use it for intelligence gathering and intelligence sifting to find what they would deem to be legitimate military targets. And then they are being reviewed by humans still, but the humans are reviewing what is being suggested. All right, friends, we'll keep you up to date on this and things like that as they move forward. But let's just take to heart how unstable and unreliable your power grid really is. It's not as stable as you're being told, and it's not as stable as your neighbors think it is. Backups are a good thing to have. All right, friends, thanks so much for watching. If you want to check out another video from this channel, there's one right up here. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you guys later. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report out.